Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right. No extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Jeffrey Donis. Jeffrey is a real estate investor, syndicator. Jeffrey and his two brothers started investing in single-family homes. The Donis brothers eventually built a portfolio of cash-flowing rentals and a six-figure business. Now they have partnered on over 1,000 multifamily apartment units. Their target markets include Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. Their goal is to empower others to achieve financial goals through apartment investing. The Donis brothers' passion for helping people began at an early age and has bonded them as brothers and business partners. The Donis brothers also host a podcast called the Real Estate Monopoly Podcast, a show where they interview investors who are dominating the real estate industry. Jeffrey's also, as part of being Donis Investment Group, he is responsible for raising capital and investor relations. So, Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Keith. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start as I always do, and that's really just trying to find out, where you grew up and kind of, what eventually led you to real estate. So if you don't mind sharing your story, that'd be fantastic.
For sure. So my two brothers and I were relatively young. We got started in real estate when I was 18. So that was about almost 4 years ago now. I'll be 22 this year. So I do have a twin brother and an older brother. We come from a low income single mom household. So grew up here in Durham, North Carolina. I grew up playing soccer, and my mom did an awesome job raising us with the limited resources that she had. But obviously, just it being by herself and on her own, she was definitely tight on her budget, and we saw the lack of our financial ability growing up and her financial, ability. So that was always obvious to me. And as soon as I started becoming of age and, was able to work, I realized that, maybe not being a pro soccer player would probably not pan out the way that I wanted it to. So I got into school and I started, my older brother was really the one that started looking and exploring real estate at first. It was through wholesaling that we were first exposed to real estate. He was on YouTube in his college dorm room, and he was just doing what I'm sure a lot of college kids are doing, and just watching videos mindlessly. And he luckily, by God's grace, came across one of the videos that brought on a guest. It was a group called The Breakfast Club, and they still have their show. And they brought on a specialist in wholesaling and really single family, but that was how that individual got started. And he discussed how he started his company from nothing and started finding deals off market, started talking to sellers, and eventually built $1 million company. So coming from him, my brother was inspired because that individual comes from a similar background, and it showed him that if he can do it, maybe we can do it too. So he started listening to podcasts, and he started sending us podcasts to listen to. And eventually he heard about Rich Dad, Poor Dad on one of the podcasts, and he sent us the book. And then in the book, I'm sure a lot of the audience has read the book. It talks about how real estate is one of the main ways that people become wealthy and become financially free. So that was a book that we read, and then we started continuing to educate ourselves. We read and listened to Think and Grow Rich, books like The Compound Effect, started listening to Bigger Pockets and that podcast about real estate. So slowly we started, learning more and more about the power of being an entrepreneur and taking control of your own future, specifically your financial future. And I was a college student at the time, so that was very different than what I was being taught in class. Eventually, we started taking action ourselves, cold calling in our dorm rooms for hours on day, about 2 hours a day at first, because we couldn't afford to put much time towards it since we were always also full-time students. So once COVID hit, we got sent home because of the pandemic. We weren't allowed to stay in our dorm rooms. So now instead of putting 2 hours, we could get away with putting slowly, 6, 8. And then now school was more so the thing that we were doing part-time. So that's how we got started. I'll stop there. But it was like really just a slowly, something that slowly manifested itself more and more as we educated ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm going to have to share this episode with my daughter, who's going to be going off to school here next fall, and just kind of put a little bit of pressure on here. I mean, you guys were doing this while you were in your dorm room and just cold calling. That's inspiring. That's really a great story. When you say cold calling, were you calling? You mentioned wholesaling. Were you looking for distressed sellers and doing wholesale deals, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so YouTube was our education at first. Over time, we started making a little bit of money, and we started educating ourselves through mentorships. But at first, what we knew and what we learned was you could actually pull a list of data, and you could filter the data based on who was more likely to want to sell at a discount, because we needed to get in touch with people who would obviously be willing to sell at a price that we could then put some type of fee on top of, and then find an end buyer to sell it to. So to be able to do that, you'd first have to call a lot of people, 2, get pretty good at building rapport and relationships, which is sales, and then 3, you'd have to get a little bit lucky, which I think you create your own luck in this case, and eventually you'd run into those people that, for whatever reason, were open to selling at the price that made sense for us. So that's what we were looking for, was some type of off-market opportunity for another investor, and we'd connect it to.
Yeah. And what market was this that you were focused on?
So here where we live, North Carolina, like Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Fayetteville was a big market for us. And a lot of it comes down to just the number of calls we were making. So as I mentioned at first, we were 2 hours a day, on the phones, each of us, because obviously we were on a budget for that whole year. And in the beginning, it was really big budgeting. So we were pretty much just calling on the same, what we call an automatic dialer. We were using the same list. So we had to split the resources that we had. So we all couldn't be using it at the same time, but also we were all busy. So we had to split up, our schedule and see where did that slot fit for us. Once we were at home, pretty much, I'd say, a few days after I got home, I was calling from 9 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 10 to 6 on Saturday, and then 11 to 5, 11 to 6 on Sunday. And a lot of people would be like, that's crazy. But I got so numb to cold calling that I would just leave the dialer on, and I could do other things while I'm doing it. I probably wasn't the best, but it was a numbers game. So like what that really taught me, and I still apply that skill today in anything that I do, it's just being able to overcome the fear of rejection, being able to sell, being able to talk to people, being able to spark conversations and carry conversations, things like that I'm grateful I went through that, because it was very hard and very scary at first. And over time you get better and better. And Grant Cardone, I think he's talked about it before. I love him or hate him. One thing he talks about is he used to hate being a salesman because he wasn't very good at it. And as he got better, he started to love it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in sales, and again, I'll share this episode with my sales team. After hearing you just burning up the phones there, that's awesome. But really, as you get used to it, like you said, you do get somewhat numb to it. Also, the rejection just doesn't bother you as much when you start to see that, you're going to get some rejection, but you have to get through that rejection to get to the sales. Right. And so you will get those yeses, and you'll know, as the more and the more that you do it, about how long it takes to get a yes and get those appointments. So tell me on the appointments when you were setting them up with the folks. I assume you were going out, checking out their house, seeing what you could offer them. Were you using any resources as far as being able to find and estimate what the values would be, real estate agent, or what? How did you do that piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, to touch on the sales process just real quick. One thing that one of my mentors, and he raised a lot of capital, he taught me was, I didn't know this at the time, but really sales starts at the first no. And I used to not really understand what that meant. But that's when, you start to have to sell people, because if it was easy, then they would all say yes and you wouldn't have to sell. But as soon as they say no, that's when you actually try to, I would say that persuade is probably an easy word, the first word that comes to mind. But obviously that's where the salesperson is highly skilled and able to get people from no to yes. But in regards to getting people in person, that was our first goal always. Eventually we were doing it virtually, where we would just lock it up and could get pictures from the seller themselves. We wouldn't actually have to go see it. But in the beginning, each lead was so valuable to us that we wanted to get in person because we knew our close ratio was higher. So we would actually call people, try to set up an appointment. And then the way that we would underwrite the deal, which I still do today, is just based on running comps and comparables. So we would look at, obviously, single family and commercial real estate are valued differently. For commercial real estate, it's based on cap rates and the NOI of each individual asset. But for single family, it's based on what properties around it are selling for, and if they're considered a comp, which for us is a property that was built within 10 years of when ours was built, within 10% of the square footage, within a mile, and then within the same, a similar layout. So 3-2, 2-1. And by that, I just mean 3 beds, 2 baths, 2 beds, 1 bath, etc. So as long as it looked very similar and hit those boxes, we would consider that a comp. And based on what those properties sold for, we knew, okay, well, this is what our after repair value is, meaning after we do renovations to it, this is what we can probably sell it for. And then we have a little formula that we would run that would be that times a certain percentage, which for us was 75%, which would leave room for our profit. And then we would subtract our renovation costs. So if it was like a heavy lift, meaning it needed a lot of work, we'd probably budget like 45 to 50. If it was a 1,100 to 1,300 square foot house, the bigger, the more, the less, a little bit less. And then a lighter renovation would probably be 15 to 20 grand. And once we hit those numbers, that gives us what we call our max allowable offer, MAO. So we would then go and try to negotiate under that price, because the more spread we had, the more we would be able to take ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. When doing that, you can't, as you mentioned, you're currently, did you say 23 or 24?
21.
Yeah. 21
this year.
Oh, yeah, because you started when, okay. Yeah, 21. When you went over to visit with the owners, there had to be some kind of are you sure you can pay this much for this house? Did you get any resistance there? And if so, what did you do to overcome it?
Yeah, I think that's something that we still face, especially with multifamily. But with the single family, at first, I think the first thing is how you carry yourself, how you talk to people. Because yes, you look young, but at the end of it, it's really, in my opinion, like age is a mindset. Now, don't take me wrong. Like, yes, I'm young, so that comes with its own challenges. Like, I haven't been in the industry for as long as other people, and perhaps they might think I don't have as much money as I would need. But at the end of the day, it's all about, one, how can I carry myself? How do I talk to you? Can I build a good relationship? Can I allow you to trust me? Like, am I trustworthy myself? And then what my process looks like. A lot of things that I fortunately can try to control. Am I sending you a contract that looks shady? Or am I using a great title company, a great attorney that if you don't trust me, you can call them because they handle the closing themselves. So I leverage heavily in anything that I do right now, specifically multifamily, and in the single family space, we did this. We'll leverage our partners and our team members who are older and have a lot more experience. But also, if you can answer their questions and carry the conversation and you know what you're talking about, which I think is something that to a certain extent you can control based on the amount of time you put into your education, actually doing what it is that you're trying to do and what you say you're doing, and then also surrounding yourself with awesome people. You'll be able to carry those conversations, and a lot of times people don't even ask how old you are.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I think you're right. I mean, it is mindset, and there is ways around it. And I love that you're partnering up with people that are in the industry. I mean, it's an overall team effort when it comes to some of that stuff. And I think just the perception and everything. Tell me about funding on these. Did we do hard money, or actually you're wholesaling these contracts? So you're just tying them up and then finding somebody that's flipping homes or somebody that wants to do buy and hold, or did you participate in any of those? Yeah.
So in the beginning, when we first got started, we were wholesaling because we didn't have much money to be able to go in, or relationships to be able to do fix and flips. But now that we're in the multifamily space and we've had some years under our belt, we've built our track record of relationships. We've learned a lot, still have a lot to learn, but we are at a certain point where now we're actually fix and flipping them ourselves. And I'm grateful that I went through the process of wholesaling, because I understand how to underwrite a deal, how to talk to wholesalers, how to find them, how they think, things like that. So now we do bring on hard money lenders for our fix and flips, and it's an interesting approach that I'm very grateful to be in regards to the position that we're in, because I obviously do multifamily. We syndicate those opportunities, and those opportunities come with certain types of returns, and the investment looks very different than what I can offer my own, same investors when it comes to our fix and flip projects. So for fix and flips, we are bringing on hard money loans and lenders, and we'll also bring in a private investor for the gap, because we typically do need working capital and things like that. Obviously, there's fees involved, and we can offer a great return to people. Not going to go too much into it, but it's very different now. We enjoy working with hard money and private money, because obviously that means I don't have to put as much capital into each deal. And that's where the skill set of being able to raise capital from multifamily that we learned through that process can apply to any business, regardless of whether it's multifamily, single family, or anything else. It's something that fortunately we've been able to learn how to do and build relationships with our investors. And it's helped us grow and scale pretty much any business that we've jumped into since then.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as the, how many single family did you rent? I guess you did them as rentals eventually and were receiving the cash flow. How many did you build it up to before you decided to jump across the pond to multifamily? What did that look like?
Yeah. So when we moved into multifamily, it was after 1 year of being in real estate, and the first 3 months or maybe 6 months into our journey, that was all wholesaling. And as I mentioned, we're always learning. We're lifelong learners. That's the goal that we strive to achieve. I guess we'll never get there, right? That's the goal. But pretty much we came across an individual called Pace Morby, and he talks about creative financing. So we joined his mentorship, and that taught us how to buy properties on seller financing or owner financing, and also subject to, which is when you leave the mortgage in place and then you take the mortgage, and you don't assume it, but you take over the payments and you're responsible for those. So we ended up getting one that was an owner finance deal, 0% interest, 0% down. We pretty much were into that, just closing costs. And then we wrapped it. And one of them, we didn't wrap that one. We lease optioned that one, where we got an option fee down, and we were then rent to owning on the back end. So that one was really good. We ended up selling that, I want to say last year. The other one that we did that year was the second rental that we did for that year. And we ended up lease optioning that one as well, but we took that one over subject to. So 0% down again. Obviously, there's an interest rate, but it was really low. And we were cash flowing, and we still are cash flowing today. We actually still own that. So chances are, who knows if the person will actually cash us out on the back end, which is what they have the option to do. That's why they paid the option fee. And if they don't, that's fine with us. In fact, we locked it in at a pretty low overall price. So they're getting a great deal if they do buy us out. And if they don't, then we just get to do it again. And now we ended up doing one more of those this year, where we took it over subject to. I actually wrapped this one. So what we did was the mortgage itself that's underlying has a certain interest rate, has a certain what we call PITI, it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And we pretty much went in, increased the interest rate a little bit because we're going to be the bank on the back end to this homeowner. They can't qualify for a mortgage themselves because they're self-employed. So they get paid like cash and they can't qualify through a bank. So we'll be the bank for them. They'll put a down payment down that covers our entry fee because we got this one from a wholesaler. So we pretty much broke even on the front end and we're cash flowing about $400 a month on it, which is awesome. And then we're looking for more deals like that, but we're also doing a lot of fix and flips, trying to get to 20 this year. And then, hopefully like my goal is 100 next year while we're doing multifamily, just because we have a lot of energy. So we want to stay busy.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Yeah. And most people would say, flipping homes right now, what about the economy? What about the prices? I mean, is this really the best time to jump in? And, I hear that on my end as well, just because we just did our first flip and,
Awesome.
heard a lot of naysayers out there, as far as, you sure you want to do this right now? It's taking longer to sell and this and that. But what's your response to that?
Yeah. Did your flip go well?
Yeah. We're still right in the middle of it. Ultimately we'll see. I'm a real estate broker. And so I'm always looking at the market. I'm confident that we'll be able to sell it at the end. But it's like you, I'm kind of ramping up this year and then next year really want it to be a lot larger than what it is.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So as I mentioned, I live here in North Carolina and nationwide there's a housing shortage, right? So I think and I know you know this, so I'll be like speaking to the chorus when I'm talking to you, but for anyone in the audience, obviously interest rates are relatively high for a lot of homeowners in comparison to what interest rates have been. But we all know that over history, where we are today, it's actually not that bad. And a lot of people may initially have thought that interest rates were going to come back down to where they were last year and the year before. But chances are they might not come down all the way to zero. I don't think they will. I think they'll come down maybe to 5%, which is still very good in comparison to what they were in like I want to say 70s. I wasn't alive, but around that time they were like 13%, maybe even higher than that. So with a lot of people not wanting to sell their current homes because they are locked in at a really good interest rate, that was leading to a lack of supply. And obviously a lot of people didn't want to buy right now, but there's still people that are willing to buy. And slowly that buyer pool has increased over time. While the lack of supply is still a prevalent problem and issue, we've seen a lot of demand for the flips that we're doing in the markets that we're in. And I also like to go after properties that I can sell, meaning my after repair value would be lower than the median household price. So in regards to what an average homeowner can afford, I want to say it's like $491,000 is the average home price, and then what the average person could afford a few weeks ago was like $440,000, something like that, based on what most people are making. So as long as I'm under that, I still think I'm in the ballpark range of what most people in America can afford. And on top of that, I'm in these markets that are already experiencing a lot of demand and growth in regards to population. So I look at what housing prices are doing, and how long properties that are listed, how long they're sitting on market. And a lot of the deals I'm looking at, like they're still just flying off the market. And a lot of the inventory that I'm seeing that it's doing that is not even, fully renovated. It's in as-is condition. And I know that there's demand for my product because I'm going in and doing some high quality finishes. Now we're not obviously doing like luxury flips at this point, but in the markets that we're in, it's affordable in regards to total price point. So I think there's risk for sure in any flip, but that's why you budget for your numbers and renovation costs. And I'm working with people that I've worked with on multiple deals. So at this point, I feel like, people are going to sit on those sidelines one way or the other, but I want to be in the action. So I try my best to mitigate my risk by looking at statistics and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's good. And then as far as, there's other exit opportunities as well. If heaven forbid, the market doesn't allow you to sell it at, around the price that you want, you can always put a tenant in it and still ride it out from there. And in buying in North Carolina is not a bad place for that. So Texas, North Carolina, you said, you guys do stuff in Florida as well as Georgia. All those are strong markets right now. So that's great.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me, I guess, so from there, how did you get into multifamily, and what was your first one? Give us a little bit of an example on that, if you could.
Yeah. So I've touched on a few times. We've joined a few mastermind groups, and that was what got us into multifamily. So I was on just listening to podcasts, and I heard someone come on and talk about syndicating. And that's what was keeping me back from getting into commercial real estate at first. Now, granted, I was relatively new to the industry, so most people don't decide to just jump right into commercial after only being in single family for a few years. But
Yeah.
I'd heard about it. It was very interesting to me, and I saw that there was a lot of big players in the space, so I was interested. So I started learning more about it, and then I heard about syndication, where you could just pull together a group of investors' money and go buy a project as a team versus just doing it by yourself, which would help me because I obviously didn't have the capital to do it on my own. So what I liked also was that I can do it with a team, and there was you split up the pie in regards to not doing it by yourself. That's how it makes sense to do it with a team, because you're all getting a little bit of the, I guess, equity. So we eventually joined this mastermind group out of Texas called Think Multifamily that we found through Bigger Pockets. And through that group, it opened the door to the network that we needed, the mentor, the knowledge, and deal flow. So as soon as we joined that, I want to say maybe a few months later, we were looking for our own deal, but over time you build relationships with brokers. At first they don't really take you seriously, especially us, since we were relatively young, as I mentioned. They just would look at us like, we're some kids trying to buy these apartment complexes. But slowly, as we started doing our own deals, they started taking us more and more seriously, and we ended up doing our first as a lead sponsor in November of last year. The previous few deals we did were as co-general partners. So the way that we found those was through our mentorship, and I was just always networking, making phone calls, going to the mastermind events in person, building relationships, and trying to see how I could bring value to other team members. And one of the biggest things has always been capital, but also we're pretty decent at marketing. So whether that was helping with putting together some type of investor decks, or sending out emails before the deal closed, things like that. That was how we were involved early on. And slowly, as we started learning more and more, we've been able to get more involved in regards to asset management. But mainly what we did on those was learn a lot, because obviously you're not going to get on to a deal like that for us specifically and be able to call the shots, right? I don't think that'd be wise for anyone involved. So we were really just looking to get into a deal, to get experience, build our track record, and really learn, so that by the time that we started looking for our own deals, we not only had the confidence to do so, but we understood, what kind of goes on behind the scenes, so that once we had that deal, we could make sure it went well.
Yeah, that's great. And I have somebody in my mastermind that we meet each Friday, and they sometime last year, at the beginning of last year, joined Think Multifamily, and
Cool.
has I think he's in 3 deals now. Since then, probably co-GP, not the primary, but still, great program. I mean, you mentioned it. Whether it be looking on YouTube, I mean, all these things, success leaves clues, and the clues are out there, and joining masterminds and different things like that. These are people that, as you said, are playing, they're playing at a higher level, and it just gives you that ease of being able to get into it, because you can look, you can ask them questions, you can, have them help you along the way. So that's great. Really cool.
And one thing that I noticed also is, like you said, it leaves clues, but if you're just like in your house, around people going to the same events they usually go to, and you're trying to show people that are not doing whatever it is that you want to do, it's just hard to see it be like it's a real thing. Like you always think like it's that thing that's in the future, or that it's too far away and perhaps never going to happen for you. But as soon as you start going to these events and getting into these mastermind groups and these circles, it seems like there's an abundance of whatever it is you're looking for and what you're trying to accomplish. And it just slowly seems to be something that you see that you can do yourself. Because it's like, for me specifically, I was young, and I'm still young, and I see all these people from afar on podcasts and on YouTube videos, and I'm reading their books about what they've done. And it seems like, okay, yes, they did it, but I don't know if I can. And as soon as you start actually shaking hands with them, talking to them in person, start to call some of them your friends, asking them questions, being able to see like these people are just real people that are maybe a few years, a few decisions, a few relationships away from where I can be if I just do certain things slightly different. And slowly it starts to happen for you. And I credit a lot of it to the people that I've been able to meet and talk to. And slowly, like whatever they're doing rubs off on you. So I think it's really important to be in those circles.
Yeah, for sure. It makes a huge difference. Well, that's great. And so since then, since you've joined them, how you said you are in 1,000 units. What is how many different transactions was that, and kind of what do you see happening over the course of the next year when it comes to multifamily? Obviously, the market's a little different there right now as well.
Oh, for sure. So in regards to your first question, it was 5 deals total. So it consists of 2 deals in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 deals in Jacksonville, Florida, 1 deal in Waco, Texas. And right now, things are interesting. My brother does our acquisitions. So he builds relationships with the brokers. He nurtures those relationships and underwrites deals. Once they come, he'll go walk deals and get FaceTime with brokers, look at assets in person, and then comes back, tweaks the underwriting. If it makes sense, we'll submit an offer. And over the last year, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of people in my close network do a lot of deals. Like I do know a lot of deals that are going on because I've been able to fortunately build a big enough network where you do see deals being done, but it's nowhere near where it was last year. And in our own company, we're submitting offers and we're not winning any of them. So we're still, I'd say 10 to 20% below what most sellers are looking for. And even though prices are coming down on a cost basis in regards to what the price per door is, we're seeing properties that were trading at like 160 a door last year now trade at 130 and probably will trade closer to like 125. So prices are coming down, but we still can't even be at that price because the debt is just so expensive and our interest rates are high and our debt service is high. So when we look at what we're cash flowing and what we can offer as a return to our investors, nothing pencils out right now. So I'm not saying that no one is finding deals, but it is very difficult. You have to underwrite lots of deals to be able to do it. And I'm hoping that there's more opportunities in the future over, I'd say, the next 6 to 12 months. I'm sure there's going to be more opportunity. This is one thing that I've always thought about too. And I'm sure you've heard of the Warren Buffett saying where be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. It seems like a lot of people right now are on the sidelines. And I always ask myself, like, isn't this the time we're supposed to be like greedy? Because everyone's scared. And in fact, like sometimes we might be scared, personally. Yeah. I'm like, no one's buying. Nothing makes sense. If I even find a deal, like, will I be able to raise the capital for it? Because a lot of these projects are at least $5 million that we would have to raise, upwards of, 8 to 9 million. And that's not always easy to raise in a good environment, let alone this kind of environment where a lot of deals are going back to the banks and a lot of operators are sort of being exposed, and you're kind of tides coming in, you're seeing who's swimming naked, as the saying goes. Yeah. So it's an interesting time, but I'm hopeful that there's more opportunities coming. Obviously I'm fortunate to have gotten into the space at a relatively young age, so I don't want to rush. I don't think I have to rush.
Hey, you don't have to buying.
Exactly. I want to be smart and buy them where it makes sense at a cost basis, because I think over the last 2 years that I've been in the space, things were just highly priced and, in my opinion, potentially overpriced. So I'm hoping that I can start seeing things under 100 a door in markets that like Charlotte, North Carolina, or Charleston, market that you never thought you'd see that for a Class B asset.
Right. Yeah, we'll start to see it at some point here. It's just right now there's still a little bit of a distance between what things are trading at and what pencils out and what things are the seller's asking. So I think it'll change. It's just a matter, you got to let it's like turning a big battleship. It doesn't turn on a dime, even though the market right now is saying something totally different. So. Yeah, that's cool. And so is that you fueled some of the just participating in everything also in the flips in order to kind of make up for not necessarily doing deals right now?
Exactly. And I think there's opportunity in real estate regardless of the environment you're in, and flipping is providing us that. Obviously we want to live and be able to make income and do something, since we're full-time real estate. So we actually, I don't know if I didn't touch on it, but we left school that first year.
I was
Do
I
real
was about
estate
to ask you. I was going to say, are you still? You mentioned the dorm room. Are you still doing that? No.
No, yeah. After that first year, man, I was reading all those books and it got to me. I
Yeah. Yeah.
realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like I wanted to have my own business, and this is kind of cliche, but I personally saw it as burning the bridges. I didn't want to have something to fall back on,
Yeah.
so decided to go all in. My brothers decided to do the same thing, and so we do this full time. So if we're not doing multifamily deals, I feel like I'm not doing anything, which makes me, especially as a capital raiser in investor relations. Yes, I'm on deals and I keep them updated, but I know I'm capable of much more than just waiting. So we were like, you know what, we can raise capital. We know how to analyze a deal, and we want to give a good return to our investors. So I see the opportunity in fix and flips, and that's why we're just turning that engine on.
Yeah, that's great. That's really neat. Tell me a little bit more about kind of the makeup of your company. You mentioned your brother. You said, I believe you said you had a twin brother. Is that correct? Or yeah,
That's correct.
and then is your other brother younger or older? The third one there.
I wish he was younger. He's 24. He'll be 25 actually in a few days. So he's the older brother, and my twin brother and I are both 21.
Wow. Well, you mentioned it, your mom doing a great job raising you guys. I mean, it's clear. You're very well spoken, and just the things that you guys are tackling and doing is inspirational. So that's really cool.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And to answer the question about the makeup, my older brother does our acquisitions. So for the multifamily side of our company, he'll talk to brokers, underwrite deals, submit LOIs. And even in these environments when we're not winning a lot of deals, he knows his role, which is to maintain those relationships. Because I think right now is probably the most important thing is to keep your ear to the ground and continue talking to them, letting them know you're not going anywhere, even if we're not always submitting offers on every deal, or if we're not winning deals and winning and putting offers at certain prices that make sense for those sellers. We're still staying active, which is important. For my twin brother, he does our marketing. So that's our podcast. We have social media content that he produces, a YouTube channel that he has, and then our email newsletters and things like that, our website. It plays a huge role in what I do, which is raising capital and trying to find more deals on the acquisition side for our single family company. Since my older brother does our construction management for that, I'm more so the relationship guy overall. So wholesalers are the ones that send us those deals. And I'm also raising capital for those deals as well as our multifamily deals. And in regards to being able to do that successfully, the marketing piece is so important. I think a lot of people, they'll ask us how we do it, how we raise capital. I think it's marketing first, because a lot of people hear about us and then they know we're young, but I don't really have to sell myself if the marketing does it for me. So if they already heard about me and see that we're producing a lot of content, they already see me as a credible, trustworthy individual in the space. So when I talk to them, very, very rarely do I have to even sell. It's more so just educating at that point. But on top of that, the credibility aspect, being young, it helps to have content out there that people see you as a thought leader. I think that's very important. So regardless of the age, I just think doing it at a young age proves that anyone can do it, especially if you're young. If I'm doing it at a young age, I think anyone should be able to do it. Now I do have more time, granted, things like that. But just a good mesh that we have going on. It seems like we're all doing what we enjoy and focused on the strengths versus what we don't enjoy and what we're not good at.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like everybody complements each other, within that business. So that's great. About on the raising of capital, tell me a little bit about that. What does that look like on your last couple multifamily deals? How much were you able to raise? And
I'll talk about the last deal we did was in November, and it was on a deal in Atlanta. We were lead sponsors on that. So we ended up bringing from our own investors. I have relationships, and a lot of them, believe it or not, it's cool when you think about it like this, where I haven't met some of my investors. Some of my biggest investors I've actually never met in person, which is cool. Like through social media, it was a limiting belief for myself in the beginning. And you start to realize that you can do a lot of these things through the podcast that I'm on, like this one, or my own podcast. Like they do play a big role. And in the beginning, you think, what am I doing this for? Like no one's even listening, or it's not even that good. I don't feel like doing it. It seems pointless. But over time, people do start to pay attention. And even if you don't think they are, even if they aren't at that point, you do, come across one person on LinkedIn that sees your post. They look you up and see that you have a podcast. They don't really know how many views you're getting. So that's kind of irrelevant from that perspective. It's more so they're seeing you as a thought leader and someone that's credible and talking about it. They can get on the podcast and listen to you speak, hear what your thoughts are, what your investment philosophy is, things like that. So they learn more and more about you through your content. And that's how I was able to raise capital on my deal in Atlanta from a lot of my own investors. I also had networked heavily that year prior in regards to networking with other co-general partners and people that could come onto my deal and partner on the deal with me. So then obviously that comes with their own network of investors. And we eventually were able to network with an equity broker who actually had a relationship with the family office, and they ended up bringing capital through that family office to our deal. So that helped us get that deal closed. It wasn't like a smooth sailing deal in regards to the capital raise, because I wouldn't blame it on just one thing, but one of the things that made it difficult was the environment we were raising capital in. It was in May, which, if you don't remember, that's when they started raising rates, the Federal Reserve. So a lot of investors were scared. I was scared, to be honest. I didn't know what was going on and what was going to happen. But that's why it's important having mentors on your side, because they tell you, yeah, man, pull the trigger. Like, this is a good deal. So we went with it. We went forward and we got it done. But a lot of people were scared, and there were certain things with the deal that made some people not necessarily too excited. It was a Class C 1960s build. So during that time, people started to tighten up on their criteria. We're leaning more toward the B class 1980s vintage or newer asset. And we just were like, well, at this point, there's no turning around. We're going to get it done one way or the other. And fortunately, we got it done. But that's where the networking beforehand played a huge role, because one, I'd already had a lot of relationships I could lean on, but also through my content, any new relationship I made with a co-general partner or a family office, they could look me up and see that, okay, these people are everywhere and they have some type of credibility. So I'll at least get on a call with them. And that's when obviously your sales skills comes in. But it was a mixture of everything that helped us get it done. It wasn't easy, but that's how we got that one done.
Yeah, that's great. Very interesting. And then tell me, I guess, a little bit about when you mentioned, or at least your bio mentions the different markets. Tell me a little bit about why you've chosen those markets, if you could, and then also specifically what size, what basically describe your buy box a little bit as far as multifamily we can stay with.
For sure. So the what is it called, the bio I sent you, it might be a little outdated, so I'm sorry, but I'll update you. That's now. Okay. We look in the Carolinas, South and North Carolina. I live in North Carolina, and we'll also look near Atlanta. So I'd say 45 minutes outside of Atlanta. The reason for that is, one, I live close, and we do want to play a role in the asset management on deals we do now. We want to source our own opportunities versus co-GPing. So if we're going to be doing asset management, my brother does that for us, and we want him to be able to drive to the asset in a day's notice if he needs to. He is the kind of person that will do it on the day. He'll leave within 30 minutes if he needs to. And having that ability is important for us. So that's one reason. Two, obviously, over the last few years, the Southeast has been getting a lot of population growth. A lot of jobs are moving here. And when that happens, there's a demand for our rental units, specifically the ones that we're buying, because they're typically affordable. Not necessarily Class A luxurious types of assets, but Class B, Class C workforce housing. When it comes to our criteria, actually, we're leaning more towards Class B, 1980s vintage or newer. We used to look at 100 plus, I'd say 100 to 200. But with the environment we're in today, we like to be 80 to 150 is our sweet spot. Mm-hmm. It depends on the market, because sometimes, obviously, the price per door will be different depending on where you're looking. And I like to, like Kenneth, my older brother, he's aggressive. He's a visionary of our group. So he'll say, we can buy this $30 million deal and raise $10 million, bro, let's do it. And I'm like, I don't know why you're so crazy, but I have to go and then try to raise the capital. And in this environment, it can be difficult to be able to get that done, because a lot of people are scared. So maybe I'm conservative, but I like to be under $8 million for the raise. I think I can get it done if it meets my criteria, as I mentioned, which is in a high quality market where the median household income is 50,000 or more. It's a Class B vintage 1980s or newer product, and it's near a big city like Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Charlotte, Charleston, Greenville, near Atlanta. And one other thing we like is when we know how those judges and how the eviction process works in those certain cities, because, and unfortunately, we have a few projects that we learned the hard way. Like, you can think it's a red state, but sometimes it just comes down to the county on a county basis. Like, who are those judges and justices, and what's their viewpoint on evictions? Certain markets, we thought it would take the normal 30 to 45 days to evict, and on some, it's taking months. So that's obviously not a good thing. Like, you do have to get creative to get over those hurdles and obstacles. But knowing now, like, exactly what we're getting into is an important thing. So we, even if it's a red state, like I could say that, but we actually look at like who those people in office are and policies and things like that, because it's important.
Yeah, for sure. And did you, I guess you were you've had these sort of at the tail end of, the real COVID. Did you see much after the purchase or any of that affected the investment initially, or maybe you thought it would?
Yeah, I would say the main thing has been the like delinquency issues that you might expect. Now, like on certain projects, we've had, like, on one of them we had a fire go on, but like outside of the things like that that are pretty out of the norm, I'd say that overall, just constant thing that we've been seeing has been delinquency issues in certain markets. Now, for whatever reason, we can say that's because of the economy. I personally think it might just be like property management issues in certain parts of our portfolio. We're seeing that certain groups we just won't work with in regards to PM, but it really comes down to, in my opinion, on certain properties in certain markets like Atlanta, where you're buying, because Fulton County is one county that we're in, and those justices, they're just not like, granted, they did have over 12,000 evictions filed after COVID, which is a lot. So obviously you're slammed, but they're also a little more leaning towards, residents. And we're not trying to evict anyone if we don't have to. We'll get creative and try to help them. But sometimes people just don't want to pay, which we're running a business. So like, we can't have you living for free, unfortunately. And then we'll have to go get other avenues. And as that bad debt starts to pile up, it can negatively affect your asset. So our goal is to obviously not be in markets that would be an issue. The goal is to turn units as fast as possible. So when you're looking at it, what markets we're in right now, I think Atlanta has been one of the ones that we've been seeing that on. Not to say you can't get creative though, because we have been in regards to doing like cash for keys or balance forgiveness. It's not ideal, but that's certain things that we've been seeing. Outside of that, obviously, like a lot of those were on bridge loans. So when you're buying these properties on bridge loans, we bought rate caps, which is a good thing, but still, it's like not knowing and underwriting for it. Fortunately, on all of them we did. On most of them we did. So we're pretty comfortable where we are now. On certain deals, we stopped distributions because we want to stay liquid and have the reserves there for anything that happens on the property with our current bad debt on certain projects that we have. So we want to make sure that we have enough reserves to ride out any big waves and rough waters that we have over the next few months. But I think right now the goal is just to survive until 2025 for a lot of operators, including us. We're trying to just get to that point where there's more of a stability in the market, and we can ride it out and hopefully refi all the deals and proceed on into the future. I'm confident that, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I would love to hear it in regards to cap rates and where they are right now. It seems like obviously interest rates were artificially raised. So, I've heard the argument made that cap rates are artificially being expanded. And once interest rates start to stabilize or come down, cap rates will start to stabilize. And from that perspective, I think that means come back and compress again. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I kind of can see where that logic is coming from. So I'm not saying I agree with it, but I just want to see what you thought.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think there'll be an adjustment. They're going to expand probably over the next year and a half. And of course I don't have a crystal ball, but and seeing these. I went through 2007, 2008, and I learned a lot of lessons then. But yeah, I think that we're going to get through this, right? And rates will come down. And again, I don't know that they'll come down as low as they were there for a bit, but as long as they get more in a reasonable spot, then number one, there's going to be more people able to buy. There's going to be more deals that are penciling out, and that alone, is just going to, I think, help recompress the cap rates, because there'll be just a lot more people going after deals, and a lot more sellers being able to sell at what they're hoping to. So,
yeah, no, I agree. That's why we're not in any rush to buy. But right now, also on the operations side, we are focused on just ensuring that those go well, so that we can exit, or at least not be forced to exit. Right, and I think right now there's a lot of pain, so we don't want to be a part of that if possible.
Yeah. All right, I got a couple questions for you, but before we get to those, because we're running a little bit long, I want to be respectful of your time. We're recording this here on a Saturday, so I just want to make sure that we don't go too far over. Where can people find out more about you?
So you can find us at our website, www.donisinvestmentgroup.com. And then you can do /checklist on that link if you want to see our checklist that we put together for any investor looking to vet a passive investment opportunity. You can visit our podcast at The Real Estate Monopoly on all podcast platforms. And then we're at Donis Brothers on all social media platforms. And I'm at Jeffrey Donis on all of them as well.
Okay, perfect. All right, I got two other questions, and this first one, usually I'm talking with somebody who's much older. When I ask this, what would you do different when you were younger? And you right away have already kind of blown that out of the water. But for somebody that maybe is just starting their investment, journey, what maybe would you have done differently, or what advice would you just give them? Maybe it's not something you do differently.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest difference, and I mean, yes, I'm young for sure, and the biggest thing that I changed over the last 4 years has been two things. One, who I spend my time with, and that's not always for me physical. It's a lot of times whether I'm talking to my God for me, or listening to a book or listening to a podcast that used to be music or Netflix or Hulu, things like that. That's been a big change. I don't do that anymore, and instead I have filled that with other things that I see as I can get more of a return on my investment in regards to what I put my time into. That's the first thing. And the second thing I touched on, who I spend my time with. It's very obvious to me now, but back then, if I just look at my habits and who I was, a lot of it was based on who I was spending my time with physically. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my friends in college or high school, whatever they were into, I was into. Now, a lot of the people that I look up to or try to spend my time with, even through their podcasts or books, I look at what they're into, and now I'm into those things. So whether that's my faith, my business, spending time with my family, quality time, things that for me now I try to value, and my health, even things like that. That's what I'm more cognizant of. And if you can focus on those small things, just simply like I just said, where you spend your time, and you can control that, you'll start to realize that like if you can have you can navigate that into a positive direction. And for me, that's business right now. And on this podcast, we're talking about real estate, but it applies to everything for me.
Yeah.
Then you slowly can get more control over it and push yourself in the right direction.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great advice. And one other question, and I usually ask this for myself as just as much as the audience, but any good book recommendations? I see a lot of them behind you there that I have. But yeah, what's your kind of what book would you recommend to the audience?
Yeah. So I like David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. I love that book. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's a good one. Cool. For sure.
I want to give one that no one's heard of. So I'm reading right now Sam Walton's, I don't even know the title, but Sam Walton's book. And then ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy is good. And then Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil. That one's really good.
That is a good one. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, well, I haven't read the Sam Walton one, so I'll give it a shot. But
cool.
Jeffrey, I've enjoyed this. I know that you've given a lot of value to the audience, and reach out to them, and great opportunity. So really excited to see what you're going to be doing in the years to come. So thank you so much for your time.
For sure, I appreciate you having me, Keith. It's a pleasure.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.